All right, good evening. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Preservation Committee for Wednesday, March 30th, 2021. The meeting has been hosted with our town clerk's office. It is a hybrid meeting in person, and some of our members are logging in remotely using Zoom app. The public can be present here at our PSAP building at 5 Avenue, or you can log in through the Zoom application. The address is printed on the meeting agenda, as I said, posted at the town clerk's office. Because we are hybrid, we'll follow some of our remote rules, and those will be that I'll do a roll call vote on all resolutions matters, and I will do a roll call attendance to confirm that everyone can hear me and I can hear them. So we will start with our roll call. Mr. Barnes.
Here.
Mr. Dermott.
Here.
Mr. Foster.
Here.
Ms. McKnight.
Here.
Mr. Crock.
Here.
Ms. Dorfman.
Here. Thanks, Kristen.
And Mr. Zambone.
I am here.
Okay, and the chair, I am Peter Fingertron. All right.
Mr. Chair, do you want to see if you can hit got it over there and see everybody? What do you think?
Chris,
I
welcome.
apologize about my tardiness.
No worries, all good.
Hey, Hank, how you doing? Good.
And Mr. Chair, may I speak just briefly?
Sure, hold on.
All right, let me just note for the record that Chris Gersel is present, correct? Mr. Gersel?
I am present.
All right, you got in just in the nick of time, so we are all here. Okay, yes, Mr. Dermody, you have something to say under Chairman's announcements.
Thank you. Yes. Hi, everyone. We got a lot of work to do tonight, and I know we've had discussions about how late we go. So I'd like us to maybe agree on a stop time, work real hard, be efficient, and agree on a stop time that if we're not done, we meet again next week.
Okay, so.
And I would propose we aim for 9 to get our deliberations done, but we agree we might extend till 10 at the latest.
Okay, so my goal would be, let's put these, we have a print date tomorrow for the warrant. And
Thank
so
you for
if
that
we make
update.
changes, we will then just be submitting amendments to the warrant, which is a bit cumbersome.
Yeah,
So-
I'm not a big fan of that.
Okay, so what we'll do is, I think that we probably can get our work done in
Good.
2 and perhaps 3 hours. But we'll be mindful of that. And you are correct. We do have next week too, as well. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I could second Mr. Dermody's request, I think that we've had in numerous occasions we've had discussion. And I think if we can limit the discussion and not rehash it again, we probably can accomplish a lot of what we want to accomplish tonight.
Okay, good. So that's just a kind of okay, agreed, fine. I guess we will all be mindful of that. And to the degree that I have not been mindful of that, I apologize. Okay. So, all
Mr.
right.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Zimmerman.
yeah, just as a suggestion, if we could maybe use your discretion and reshuffle the,
I'm going to take care of that.
okay, great.
Okay, good. Well, I'm going to go through chairman's updates really quickly, and then we will work on, all right? So I'm going to do this quickly. This is the report out on my finance committee consultation. And what you'll see in your packet are questions and answers from the Needham Housing Authority. There are also a limited number of questions for Needham Community Farms. I have copies of those. I can just touch on those when we get to the articles themselves. And I think what we'll do with, if there are any questions that you have regarding FinCom's questions to the Housing Authority, those could be addressed in the context of the discussion under those particular warrant article that we're discussing. Just generally speaking, I would say that there were concerns expressed by a handful of FinCom members that centered on issues around eligibility, with one particular request by the Housing Authority, but more generally on all the requests by the outside non-town entities, issues of accountability and monitoring issues and things like that. So with NCF, and there were in particular just a handful of members who objected to the notion that there should be any fees associated with leasing of the beds. Again, we'll take that up at that time. So as I mentioned, NHA has drafted a response to these questions because NHA and NCF were requested by FinCom to appear before them on the night that they're going to vote, okay, and answer some of their questions. And so they were kind enough to actually put together questions and answers in advance, and they're going to be submitting those to FinCom, and I think FinCom's anticipated conduct would be to center their questions on those questions that they previously asked. All right. Some takeaways I think that I just want everyone to be aware of, which is one thing that I felt that resonated with me a bit was this question of I'll call it accountability for lack of a better term, but it kind of centered on non-town applications like community farms, housing authority, and in fact, then the First Baptist Church. And what I've been in touch with our executive staff here at the town. And what I anticipate that we're going to be doing is working with our town manager on two fronts. One is after there's a grant given to a non-town entity that we would hire a professional, especially when we're dealing with big numbers, like the numbers that are being requested by the housing authority, to have a professional assist our town manager in the review of the request for the drawdowns on payment. For those of you who are unaware, you draw down on, if your grant is allowed, you make a request for funds as they're needed. There's a certification that the applicant has to sign under pain of penalty of perjury. There's some backup documentation that's requested as well. And what we're going to do is address that so that it's that document for its compliance with the rules and regulations for the applicant, the grant agreement, the Community Preservation Act itself, that those requests are compliant with that. And we'll do that. We'll take that, have that individual assist our town manager, who's ultimately the person responsible for making the disbursement after town meeting. Okay. And then we'll do a similar thing going into the process. We don't need to do that this year, but going into the process, you know, we don't have the benefit of, say, the Permanent Public Building Committee in looking at applications by the Needham Housing Authority. We don't have the benefit of those applications being vetted and coming up through our own finance department, our own project managers who work on these projects routinely. And so we need to kind of replicate that so that we're taking the appropriate look at the application through the process. And we'll be seeking professional assistance with those when those applications come in to us. What I'll anticipate doing next year is requesting that we use our administrative fee to pay for the cost of those professionals that we need. And then the final thing that we're not to Laura Dorfman is I think some of their questions from FinCom were centered on knowing that questions about what happened to grant requests that were provided to non-government entities. And in particular, we all know the Baptist Church got a grant, but the scaffolding is still up there. And so, as Laura has suggested from the time she's been on this committee, we need regular updates about what is going on with these grant requests that we give to anyone, to town and non-town entities. We need a regular update. Okay. So, all right. So that's, I put that in under chairman's updates as kind of a quick readout of the FinCom. And so then we can go on to our regular agenda items. What I was going to suggest, first of all, is that we begin by reviewing the CPA financial summary that Dave Davison has provided to us. And then from there, I think it's natural for us to segue into Emery Grover and then proceed with Emery Grover, the tennis court, the boat launch, Needham Community Farms, appropriations to the restricted funds through Articles 15 and 16, and then return back to the four items, the four warrant articles from the Needham Housing Authority.
Mr.
So,
Chairman,
Yes.
Just a quick note, the boat launch has been withdrawn.
I know we're going to say it's withdrawn.
Oh,
We're going to
okay,
put
that's
that on the
simple?
record. It's going to be great. That's going to be a matter of minutes or seconds. Okay. Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. So, but we need to deal with that. All right. So that's how I envision things. So we'll proceed. So let's first start by going over our FY 2023 CPA, CPA financial summary for FY 2023. What you should have received was a packet from Dave Davison, which outlined 3 different scenarios for funding, with 2 things in mind. One was approaching or dealing with what we anticipate to be a large request from the Housing Authority in years 26 and 27, and balancing that with the request for financing for Emory Grover in this fiscal year in the amount of $6 million. So we gave you 3 scenarios. One was full debt of $6 million. The other was a split debt and cash, which was $3 million of debt and $3 million in cash. And the third was, which we call option B, is $4 million in debt and $2 million in cash. And so none of them actually bring the full amount, allow for the full amount of $6 million over a 2-year period in 26 and 27 for the Housing Authority, but they all come close, relatively speaking. So if you'd like, Dave has also provided us with a cover email in which he basically says that his suggestion, and it's a soft one because he knows what our role is to go with option B, which is funding Emory Grover through $4 million in debt, $2 million in cash. It uses some cash available that we have. It doesn't, it gives us some flexibility on assuming further debt down the line. And it provides some additional cash going forward in order to approach funding the housing, some potential expense for the Housing Authority in 26 and 27. So that is my summary. I've read through the document. I trust that you folks have too. And why don't I just open up the floor? You know what I'd like to do is actually have Rick say a few words, and then we can open it up to discussion. Okay.
Yeah,
Rick,
thank you,
anything?
Mr. Chair. I've had a brief conversation along with you, with Dave, and we kind of walked through. I also walked through his analysis. Fortunately, his analysis doesn't differ much from the one we've been working on all along that we've been discussing. There's and going through his write-up, I agree with his suggestion that we go with the $4 million in debt and the $2 million with cash. And the reason being is because it provides us with the greatest flexibility going forward as we get out into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year of the analysis. It enables us to make some changes and be a little bit more nimble as far as what we want to do down the road and how much we have available per some of the projects that may be popping up down in those latter 3 years. So I can, if somebody has questions, I'd be more than happy to help try and work through it if you do.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Hand is up by Artie Crocker. Artie Crocker.
Hey, Rick, the only, and the rest of the board, the only question I had is this. As far as the what's best for the town, is it best for the town that all 6 million come from us, no matter which way it goes, or is it best for the town that some of it, part of the 6 million comes from us and the other part of the 6 million comes from free cash or other means of raising it? Is there any benefit for the town of splitting it up, or is there a benefit to the town if it all comes from us? That's the question. That's the question I have. What's best for the town? What's best for us?
All right, I'm going to have Rick answer that, but are you saying splitting it up are you saying what's best for the town in terms of the 4 million, 2
Yeah,
million?
thanks, Pete. Yeah, I don't mean, there's within our committee how we deal if we're voting on the 6 million, how we deal with it. What I'm referring to right now is, let's say we only vote 4 million for our committee, and then 2 million comes from the town. Is that healthier for the town? Is it worse for the town? I know technically it may be healthier for us that all the money isn't coming from us, but what's best for the town? That's what I'm asking. That's the question. What's best for the town? How do we fund it? What's best for the town?
Why don't you know what, Rick and I have actually discussed that, but I'm gonna let Rick carry that, because we had that kind of question indirectly with both FinCom and Select Board. So I want to let Rick respond. Rick, do you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. In the, as we talked about the FinCom and to Dave, if we didn't provide the $4 million, if we didn't provide the full 6 million and went with a 4 million instead, all that would do is place an additional $2 million burden onto the borrowing that the town would have to do. The town is out of available cash funds to fund the project. And if we only did 4 million, then they would have to go out and borrow an additional 2. And there's some question, they may have to also borrow some additional money to cover some of the inflation costs associated with the project itself. So they were discussing that at the PBBC meeting this past week. I don't know what happened, but in any event, it would be detrimental, I think, if we didn't fund the full 6 amount.
Okay, thank you, Rick. That's really what I'm getting at. What's best for the town. Okay, thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
And the other point, just to add, there is, we received late in the day, but it's in your packet, a spreadsheet from, I think it's from, it may have come from Hank Heff, but showing that their current projections for the cost of the building of Emery Grover has gone from 2 to 2.2, basically. We're up, or excuse me, from 20 million to approximately 22 million. Is that, what does our spreadsheet say?
20.8 million up to 22.8 million.
Okay. And those have been distributed. Those are part of your packet. You've got it. Okay. All right. So
The 5 p.m. packet, I mean,
the packet that was sent out tonight.
the 5 p.m. tonight.
Well, you may, okay, yes, sure.
Whatever it was.
Okay, yeah, so we'll call it the 5 p.m. All right, so, all right, next, Artie, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Pete. I know it had to be asked, and at least it had to be. Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, Jean.
Since the 3 different scenarios result in certain amounts of money being made available for housing authority projects, I don't understand how the amount of funds proposed for the housing authority projects, which I know have a lot of support generally in the town, fit with the letter that was in our packets from our town council about how certain projects can't be funded, certain projects can. And I'm supposing that given the total cost of the anticipated housing authority projects, that just as with Emery Grover, some parts of the project are CPA eligible, other parts are not, so that the housing authority, in compliance with town council's letter, can still legitimately apply for the amount of money that's set out in this letter, not only in this year, but in years to come. And I don't know if Reg wants to respond to that, or
I can quickly say that it's that with respect to the funding that we see, the projected funding that we see coming up, the large amounts of money coming up, requests from the housing authority. First of all, the money requests that are coming in for 24 and 25 are both for the redevelopment of Linden Chambers.
Oh,
And so that's
they are. Oh, well,
squarely, that's
clearly
squarely
was
within CPA.
committed
The
amounts.
large,
Okay.
the large $6 million request, which is, I'll characterize it as a placeholder. It's an estimate amount because that's an estimated amount. That's for the redevelopment of High Rock Homes, the cottages of High Rock Homes.
Okay,
That is squarely a CPA fundable, project. I mean,
Okay.
kind of think of it as adding more units or tearing down and starting over and having the same number of units. That's redevelopment and addition is pretty squarely within CPA.
yes, of
Okay.
course. Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that was connected with that
No, that's fine.
project solely.
All right, and any other questions?
I would just like to offer, when we use the phrase, what's best for the town, we keep in mind what's best for the town's people. As opposed to what's best for the town accountants.
I think
Yeah,
that,
my
in
apologies.
addition-
Yeah, thank you, Bob. That's basically what I meant. Although yeah, that's basically, thank you, Bob.
all right, so, and there's another item that we can deal with when we get to the later article, but it has to do with adjusting the allocations to the community housing reserve, as well as historic preservation and open space, based on amounts exceeding what our estimated receipts were going to be for 2022. And we'll talk about that, but that's the subject of another memo from Dave, and we can talk about that. It's pretty straightforward. We talk about that in the context of the warrant article, which we do later on. Okay. All right. So with that, we can move on. Well, let's deal with this. So what I'd like to do is, I think that it's we've got these funding scenarios. We should probably, we're going to eventually vote when we get to Emery Grover. We'll vote on how we allocate it. Okay, so all right. So that actually leads to our next item. We're going to skip the housing authority items, and we're going to go to page 2 of your agenda. And the next item up is Article 24. And we have it as FY 2023-05 application, Emery Grover renovation. Okay. So this is what we are going to do is update, discuss, and vote on whether to recommend funding and what the structure of the funding will be. Okay, so we'll follow what our usual routine is. I will ask Mr. Barnes and Mr. Dermody if they have any updates. I know that Hank Haff is in the audience. He probably could provide us with some financial updates. But why don't we start with Mr. Dermody? You have the spreadsheet from.
Yes, and I'm sure that with everybody, courtesy of Hank Caff. Thanks, Hank. So yes, an important update is the fact that a new estimate for the project has been received by consultants who specialize in this, and they're due to everything that everybody's experiencing in the world in 2022, results in an increase of cost of exactly $2 million over the previous number we had been using throughout all our discussions. So now the project total is at 22.875 million.
Okay.
And if I may, when is appropriate, maybe Hank Haff could add anything that he thinks pertinent to that for our committee discussion this evening.
Okay, good. We have Mr. Haff in the audience. Hank, do you have anything to add?
Only that it's not a shock to us, nor was it a shock to the Permanent Public Building Committee. It's unfortunate in the time we're in, but the cost estimators were seeing a 1% per month increase during 2011. And we were experiencing that in other town projects, but this is the next one to go out the bid. And so the committee also, PBBC also voted Monday night to maintain the 20% contingency because of the volatility in the market.
Okay. Okay, so now, any other comments or questions regarding our article, excuse me, FY 2023-05 Emery Grover, Article 24 on the warrant article. All right. So what I'd like then
I
is,
have one question.
sure.
Has there been a legal review by town council of the eligibility of the project and how money being funded to
comply with the CPA requirements. It may have happened, obviously, in years past.
Mr. Chairman, would you ask the speaker to be closer to the microphone? Because I couldn't
Thank
hear
you.
him.
I couldn't
Oh,
either.
Okay, so we wanted to know
Do
if there's been, I know that legal counsel has reviewed.
you want to repeat the question because they didn't hear it?
Yeah, why don't you ask it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I asked, has there been a formal review by town council of the eligibility of the Emery Grover project as it's now conceived, which is obviously been considered over many years, but is present incarnation for funding with CPA funds? Do we know that we can do that legally?
I think, well, I know that our town council has reviewed all of the CPA articles. I know that our town council expressed an opinion regarding only those articles that he felt were not eligible under the act.
So that's yes, I guess.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Kristen.
sorry, I can try to get an answer for sure if you want to come back to it.
Okay. I had that conversation with them, but we can, okay, sure.
No,
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Bill Dermody's muted. We can't hear him.
Yeah, but he's live, but he's live with everyone.
I can't hear Marty. I don't know if you can.
Oh, no, I can't hear him either. I can't hear anyone in the room.
can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I was just going to ask all of us, maybe Peter and or Rick, having met with FinCom, can maybe very quickly on the spot speak to this $2 million increase in the Emery Grover project price and how that might affect our options.
Okay, so this came after our consultation with FinCom.
Duly noted.
And so the answer is we don't know, but so what was your question?
I'm just questioning, do we still want to do one of those options, given the fact that we know that someone has to come up with $2 more million?
Okay, so all right, we know that we're not going to, so the funding request remains $6 million for us.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
That's what I needed to hear.
How does that sound?
That's great.
Okay.
But I think we need to be aware of that, right? I mean, we can vote how we think appropriate, but I'm, concerned that this is a challenge for the project.
Right.
And I want, we can with our money. So maybe that changes our options, is my point.
All I know is that the funding request remains at $6 million per the spreadsheet that we received today.
The request remains at $6 million.
So I have not received any suggestion that the amount or the requested amount is different.
Right.
Or that it will change.
Okay. Okay. But some of our options aren't funding it at $6 million, correct? Or
That's true.
from our buckets,
as
we say. That's what I'm getting at.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to get that out there. Whatever we decide, that needs to be considered.
Right. Okay. I think that what the exercise that Dave went through was pretty effective at showing that we can fund it at $6 million.
Good.
Okay, so that's how. But you're right. If you want to entertain that, you could entertain not funding it at all too.
Yeah.
Vote
Right.
against.
Just everything's in play.
Okay, great.
Up to $6 million. Great. Thank you.
No, you could go beyond that if you want. You can adjust the amount.
Okay, great.
Or reduce it.
Yep.
What's that?
Or reduce it.
Yeah.
Or reduce it. Absolutely.
And in response to Reggie Foster's question, didn't we have a very detailed analysis, not by town council, but by the proponent of the Emery Grover project on what exactly can be funded as historic preservation and what aspects of the project could not be funded, and we were satisfied with that.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. All right, so now, I'd like to, at this point, if we can,
The hand up.
there's another handout. Yes, Mr. Zimbo.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just to clarify for the question that Bob raised, when we were meeting with Dave Davison, he anticipated that the cost of the project was going to be going up. And he indicated at the time that the town, for whatever amount that went up, the town would just seek additional borrowings, and that would be factored into the warrant article when presented to town meeting.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Rick. Okay. All right. Any further discussion or questions? Okay. So what I will make a motion to recommend funding on the school department's request for $6 million for the Emery Grover renovation project under historic designation. And we'll get the language of this, but the motion that I would make is that $2 million be transferred I apologize.
I believe it's free cash.
I think it is $2 million. That it'd be funded $2 million from free cash, and the balance $4 million be funded through the issuance of debt. Do I hear a second? And then we can have discussion.
I will second it.
Okay, Chris Gersel is a second. Okay, discussion. Okay, hearing none. Let's have a roll call vote. All those in favor. Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mr. Dermott,
Aye.
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
Mr. Gerson,
Aye.
Mr. Zamboni,
Aye.
Ms. McKnight,
Aye.
Ms. Dorfman,
Aye.
Crocker.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay. Next up is Article 22, FY 2023-07, the application for Needham High School tennis court improvements. We have our liaisons, Mr. Dermody and Mr. Barnes here, and I will provide you with a little bit, Rick and I will provide you with a little bit of update about the FinCom response to that. Okay. Do you have any other updates? Do you have any updates?
I received a couple of questions about the surface itself, which I was able to answer with stuff we had already discussed. But one of the questions was, would the resurfacing of this area include lines for pickleball? And I did not respond, but I think I could respond here that I would say as the liaison, that would not be something that I would endorse. This is competitive high school tennis. You don't need additional lines to interfere with the play and the distraction that could be involved. So to answer the question to that person who asked it, I think pickleball lines would be great at Newman or at Mills, but not at this particular location.
If I may add just to that from the Park and Rec's perspective, is that we have talked about it and there will not be pickleball lines up at the high school. It is, as you said, strictly a high school level sport. It is not to be considered a pickleball court. It will strictly be tennis only.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so from Finance Committee, we did discuss with them the issue of maintenance and how that may have played a role in the early degradation or the degree of degradation that these courts have suffered. I think that they will be, we kind of put that on as a future issue and a real issue. but that's not really the bailiwick of this committee. But they will address that in future years. And I just want to remind the committee that we raised that issue with select board, including the $1.5 million that may be the ultimate cost. And that was also the select board's position was essentially that this is the kind of expense that they would look to share with us, or because we have it, I think, slotted for $500,000. So question of maintaining the assets, not necessarily our bailiwick, but we brought it to the attention of the finance committee. And the question of the high cost for the replacement, we brought it to the attention of the select board, and they've indicated that that's going to be a cost that we're going to have a discussion on in terms of sharing it between town revenue and the revenue that's generated by CPC. Rick, does that make sense? Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, so this is an application for $50,000 to basically do the design work, inspection and design work for the tennis court. And what I will do is I'll make the motion. And I'm doing this, making the motions only because they're a little wordy and I've got them in front of me. So, and this is with respect to Article 22. I would move to recommend funding on the Park and Recreation's request for $50,000 for the Needham High School tennis court improvements under the recreation designation, which will be transferred from CPA free cash. All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Okay. Let me just check.
I'm
Rick,
sorry, Mr. Chair, who seconded?
Barnes.
that was Barnes. Okay, and Rick Zimbo, would you kindly look at our FY 2023 financial summary under the scenario of 4 million to 4 million debt, 2 million cash, and confirm where these funds are going to be coming through under FY 2023 projects?
I have it in front of me, sir, and it is free cash.
Okay, good. All right. I'll rely on you for that. Okay.
Hand up from.
We have a hand up from Artie. Artie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have it up simply for the fact that we do have to think about discussions in the future as far as maintenance. I think this is kind of skimming the gray area as far as starting to get into a maintenance area, even though we're doing this just to see what the price is going to be. And I think people come to us fairly often for things that we have to think hard about sometimes, whether they really should come to us. And this, I think, is one of them. That being said, I was going to more in line of voting against, even though I'd be in the minority, considering the town's getting hit with possibly something with Emery Grover. I will be voting in favor of it, but I think it's in our due diligence to make sure that anything that's remotely maintenance, we're not being taken care of correctly for maintenance, that we should not be funding. So, but thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks, Artie. I just want to clarify, just so the record is clear, that this is the question here that we raised as a committee was not that this expenditure would be in a nature of maintenance, which is not allowable under CPA, but that the degradation of the courts appears to have been, the lack of maintenance appears to have contributed to the degradation of the courts.
Well, yeah,
so that's
that's the point. I mean, it's if it was maintained, then perhaps they wouldn't even be coming to us. That's the point.
Okay, that's an excellent point.
Thank
Is
you,
the kind of you don't want to unintentionally or contribute to early degradation, lack of maintenance, when they know that when entities know they can come before this board for capital improvements. We'll be mindful of that, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
That's good. That's a very good point.
Could I add to Artie's point?
Please
in a
do.
different way?
Sure.
Because Laura, you set it aside. Laura Dorfman and I were kind of collaborating a little bit on our process. And we'll be coming back to that for next year. And I think there are two relevant points along the lines of what Artie brought up. One is a sort of a look back point, and one is more of a prospective point. And given that we have received these sorts of requests for as long as I've been involved in CPC, which goes back to 2009, we could consider adding to the process. And I'm just putting this in as a placeholder, not to reading the water. So I'm going to try to be succinct. Number one, that when we receive an application of this nature, that part of what that applicant has to submit is some information, information they pulled together on the maintenance over the last 25 years, using this as an example, that demonstrates that it has been properly maintained and it's not for us just because it hasn't. That's been an allegation, but we really haven't ever received any actual information. And likewise, if they come back, if using this application, but I think it's broadly applicable, if they come back to us next year for 550,000, which is what's in Dave's spreadsheet right now, or 1.5 million, which seems horrible, like a big number, that they have to propose not only that, give us this money, 500,000 to do X, Y, Z, but also how that investment of CPA funds is going to be properly maintained over the next 5 or 10 or 15 years into the future. Make a statement that, yes, this will be in our budget requests for the foreseeable future. And this goes back to, I think, the general concept you started off saying, that there are these bigger requests coming along and there needs to be more proactive management by town, regular town administration when we start making these grants here.
All right, I'm keeping notes.
Yeah.
I think those are excellent ideas, excellent points. We really need to memorialize this. And so it's really.
It'll be in the minutes.
It'll be in the minutes, but we need to actually make it, memorialize it and put it in operation. I think.
And then
that's
I'll just go
excellent.
to my regular comments since I've got the floor, which is I have no problem supporting the 50,000 because it is a design, some professionals need to go in there and figure it out. And then I will just say, because I thought this was a really important point, I did some Googling around, which is not really professional research, on the lifetime of well-maintained hard courts, which we've never asked over this whole process because we don't have our process needs to be approved. And it indicates that courts of this age, no matter how well you maintain them, eventually have to be done over from scratch.
But at what point?
Like 10 to 15 years.
That's where they're at.
That's my point. But we shouldn't rely on me just doing some amateur Googling, to satisfy myself.
But we did ask those questions of the proponent. We did. Those questions were asked.
Right, yeah.
Okay, but so.
Well, I think that goes to say, I think that goes to say, if there wasn't any maintenance on it, if there wasn't any maintenance.
I'm saying
Please,
the current.
I don't want you to cross over.
Sorry,
Please
no.
no crosstalk.
Okay.
When we're, but that's okay. But
No, sorry, no, Rick has had his hand up for a while.
okay, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along the lines of the comments that I've just heard, I think it's incumbent upon us as a committee to request of the town that anytime someone comes in and looking for us to fund a project, and we can use the tennis courts as an example, we can use the track as an example, as we did last year. If someone comes in for playground upgrades, someone comes in for refurbishing basketball courts, all of which are on the ongoing capital plan as we look out, that there needs to be a specific line item in the town's budget with sufficient funds to ensure that maintenance on all of these facilities are done. And I would suggest that as a going forward, before we approve anything, we ensure ourselves that in fact that money is in the budget and has been approved. And that's from a old finance committee member.
Okay. All right. If you can see, you're at kind of a side angle with me because you're not, the screen's not in front, so that's why it may be that I don't see you. That's not gonna help me either. But so just, if people can help me by saying someone has their hand up, that's great. Jean McKnight, your hand is up.
Yes, I want to hopefully reiterate what you said to make sure I understand it about the application indicating the estimated total project cost of $550,000 to $1,550,000, that there's no implied commitment on the part of this Community Preservation Committee that we will fund any more than 500,000 of that. At no commitment at this time, not implied or otherwise. Is that what you were saying?
I think that's pretty clear from our minutes and the statements that we've made.
Good.
Okay, it's I think that's pretty clear. Okay. It's that funding, the construction, we'll call it construction phase is a discussion. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I figured I'd just speak and ask for your permission. As if I were there. It was mentioned in our discussions with the select board, if I remember correctly, that we may not be requested to fund the 550,000 or the $1.5 million, whatever it is. It may come from town funding sources and not become a request in front of the CPA.
I summarized that. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But it was more when I made it clear that this committee, the sense of this committee was 1.5 million was a real push. That's the language that I've heard from several members.
Correct.
That from our town manager was, this was the kind of this is the kind of cost that they would look to step in and share. I think it was really a share, but that's
Correct.
fine. Okay. Okay. And now, Mr. Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add 3 words to what Reg said. For any project.
Why did Reg say?
About maintenance and,
Yeah,
and reviewing
of course.
projects going forward.
So if I'm asking for money from Linden Chambers and I'm saying it's in, terrible shape, needs to be torn down, it's a, legitimate question to say, how did it get that way in the first place? And what are you going to do to make sure that if we make this investment, it doesn't happen again?
Okay.
Any project.
Okay, so why don't you, I know you have a lot on your plate, but maybe you and Laura can just, if you just Scribner, just those, it doesn't need to be exhaustive. So we're going to compile it. I have my notes, but we'll be.
I will remember.
You'll remember. Okay. All right, so now this is our discussion, further discussion, comments. Okay, now we'll have our vote. We'll do the vote by roll call and not alphabetical order. Mr. Barnes.
Aye.
Mr. Foster.
Aye.
Mr. Dermott.
Aye.
Mr. Gersten.
Aye.
Ms. McKnight.
Aye.
Mr. Crocker.
Aye.
Ms. Dorfman.
Aye.
And Mr. Zambon.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Okay, next is Article 23, FY 2309, boat launch. And this is going to be withdrawn, correct?
This will be withdrawn.
All right,
for this
so-
one, exactly,
So
yes.
is it that Park and Rec, did they request that the article be withdrawn?
We did as at our meeting Monday of this week, as a matter of fact. We formally made a withdrawal. We voted on it as the commission, excuse me.
All right, so I always ask this question. We don't usually, this is Kristen, this is your question for you. Do we vote on accepting the withdrawal or do we just not take action?
No, Mr. Chair, once a application is withdrawn, it is withdrawn and no longer in consideration.
Okay, so it's withdrawn and we don't vote on it at all, correct?
Nope.
All right, good, fine. All right, so it's withdrawn.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Sure.
On the agenda, you were under each article, you have to appoint the presenter at town meeting. Did you want to do that at the end, or did you want to do that per article?
Let's do it as we go along. So let's go back a little bit. Okay, let's start with Emery Grover. And so that Bob Dermody wants to be the presenter. His hand is up.
Any objections?
If your hand goes up, you get the job.
I will do it with honor.
Okay, tennis courts,
I'll do it.
farms, boat launch, just kidding.
We'll
Chris,
find
give
it.
it to Chris.
Okay, good. So,
Already had to go up.
Get your cat.
all right. Now we're on to Article 21, FY 23-11, Needham Community Farms, construction of growing beds. Now, I want to, there are a couple of points that I want to make just to follow up. I'm the liaison. There were questions raised by the Finance Committee centering on the issue of fees. And basically, there were 3 members who said that they wouldn't vote for the project because they objected to fees being assessed. One member asked me if there was any CPA project that had been funded by CPA funds and that required the users to pay a fee in order to access it. And I pointed out the pool. So their expressed concern seemed to be with that they would lack control over the scale of the fees. And their expressed concern was that they thought philosophically that the revenue should come, that the fees by the town, assessed by the town were okay because the revenue went back to the town. So I've seen draft responses to those questions from Joe Leghorn, who's the vice president of the Needham Community Farms. And he raises a couple of interesting points because I think it kind of answers some questions that we had. One is that the fees are necessary in order to sustain the program. He is willing to, and we can do this as part of the grant agreement, to cap by COLA increase the amount of the fees during the term of the license. So we anticipate a license or which is the lease for the property being 10 years. And what he would do is he would agree to a schedule of what the fees would be. And they would be subject to COLA increases only during the term of the license. So now we have control over that. As for where the revenue goes, for I think I can express my personal opinion, which is the money is being there to try and sustain the program. There was a suggestion by another member of Finance Committee that they should raise their own funds in order to develop the program. He gave great statistics showing like basically 65% of his funds each year come from donations. And basically they sell what they call grub stakes, community farm shares. And so you actually have a share in the farm, but it's really in the nature of a donation. And finally, the thing that really I thought was a really important point was that they had detailed testing done of the soil, and the soil it is not possible to grow anything in that soil. It's a cap that's construction refuse from the high school that they dumped on top of that area. And there is no way to use that property as a community farm other than by either digging up and removing the cap or by developing or by having raised beds. So, in my mind, that it's, in order for us to have support for a community farm, which is a recreational use, it's the only way to do it would be through raised beds. And so this is the request. Now, but we've heard, there are other information, other comments that we've all made before. I don't want to obscure those about the fact that it's a if we view it as a business, it's a bit of a it's a flyer, I guess is what you would call it. And there's some skepticism about their business plan, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not trying to diminish that, but I want to, at least in fairness to the proponent, kind of present those points, which which would have come in the form of a question and answer. And Joe simply didn't realize that tonight was his deadline for that. He was thinking of it more as a deadline for his presentation to the Finance Committee. And so, but I wanted to actually provide that information. Okay. So that's my update. And I guess what we could do is I can make the motion and then we can have a discussion. Okay. So, and this is Article 21, FY23-11. I move to recommend funding for the Needham Community Farms request for $200,000 for the construction of growing beds under the recreation designation, which will be transferred from CPA to free cash. So here's a second.
Mr. Chair, it is not from free cash. It will be from open space.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah.
If this is under the recreation designation, how can it be open space?
So we can,
I mean, maybe it is
Yeah, I
open
know,
space,
it
but it
actually-
seems contradictory.
no, it's not contradictory. It's that the language of the statute has been amended. And so of promoting the use of open space can be funded through in the open space bucket. I don't have the language in
Yes,
front
no,
of me.
I understand
But
that,
that's-
like
but
putting
that's-
trails through the woods, boat launches, et cetera.
Okay.
But I don't know, I just question the wording of the motion.
No,
that's
your
all.
question, no, you're right,
Yeah.
you're open, you're making a legitimate question. You're saying, can we fund this from a restricted fund, open space? Okay, that's what you're saying. That's what the question you're asking.
I had thought we could.
Yeah.
It's just that your motion said under the recreation designation, and I wonder if that's appropriate. Am I being nitpicky?
Okay, no, all right, that's great. That is a good question.
Access to open space or whatever the other, well, under the open space designation.
Okay, great. I think we can do that. Under open space designation.
The application, let's see, the application that the original application did say, check both boxes.
Okay,
both
good.
Open space and recreation.
Gene, that's excellent. Thank you. Okay, all right. All right, good. So now let me, so that is $200,000 for the construction of growing beds under the open space designation, which will be transferred from open space restricted funds. Okay, I made that motion. Did someone second that?
I will second
I
it. Okay,
second it.
So now discussion.
again.
Discussion.
I would like to summarize where we wound up with respect to the idea of a two-phase approach. There was a lot of discussion. Maybe the liaisons can do that.
Sure, I can.
Yeah.
All right, if I hadn't already done that, I apologize. I was wondering if I had done the report out. I don't know if I did. So let me respond to that. So I explored that and encouraged the proponents to explore funding it in phases. And the response was, given the kind of fixed costs involved, which had to do with construction of the access path for all individuals, even those with physical challenges. The construction of a fence that if we did it on phased would require construction of half a fence and then destruction of part of the fence and then a rebuild of the fence. So then it was just be construction of an entire fence around 3/4 of an acre. And the fact that they were getting what they thought was a volume discount by getting the 150 beds all in one shot, they did not see any economic benefit for it. And basically the program, in order to launch it, their position was, we need to put the entire project up at once. So I explored that with them, and the proponents didn't see any economies to it, and instead wanted to go forward with a request for full funding in 1 year. Okay,
So, I think that all makes sense. But, there's a sort of,
Reg, you got it. You have other
Okay.
people. Just make
that
sure.
all
everything-
makes sense, but that is an enormous expansion of the existing size of the organization. And, it's run by wonderful people who dedicated a huge amount of volunteer time to making it, the success that it's been. But sometimes growing that fast can result in adverse things happening that you don't expect. So, I just wanted to put that concern on the record as we discuss this final vote. And I think this might be another candidate for more proactive monitoring by the additional new staff that's going to be, working for the town administrator, town manager, making sure that things don't start going off track before, and then all the money's gone and we haven't gotten the benefit. And I wish them the greatest of success, of course. I'm not saying this because I don't think that, it's a great project and great people, but I've just watched a lot of small companies try to grow, double their size, triple their size in 2 or 3 years. And it's not the same as running a company at this size. You want to run into all sorts of new and unexpected management challenges and things going wrong when you do expand very quickly.
You have 2 hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Reg. Okay, we have Mr. Zambone and then Mr. Crock. First, Rick Zambone.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the motion, I'm going to take a few minutes to address this, and I hope you'll all indulge me. I'm going to vote against the project. And I just want to be upfront with that, and then I'll explain the rationale behind it. Do I think community farm is a great idea? It's a wonderful resource. It's great for the town. It has a lot of very good applications. A lot of people gain a lot of benefit from the program. My problem is this. The community farm is not a town entity. It's an independent 501(c) organization. It's run by, for all intents and purposes, a group of very well-meaning volunteers. Along the lines that Mr. Foster just outlined. This is not a professional organization per se. It's a volunteer group. It's a group that really is not attuned with some of the business issues that it may face as they look to basically develop a brand new business. This isn't falling on what they've done historically. This is a new business. They've got to go out and market and sell the beds. We've had a lot of discussion about what the right number is, and they've chosen, rather than to do it piecemeal, to go full force for 150 beds. Just last week, I received in the mail a request for donations to the Natick Community Farm, where they're going to expand the number of beds that they have at their facility, different locations. And in so doing, they were looking 100% for voluntary contributions and not relying on the taxpayer or the town-funded activities. The town is very generously offering them a lease on the land for $1. And that's really kind of a subsidy that the town has decided to provide them. And I think that's great. But I'm not confident at this stage that developing a new business plan is within the wherewithal of this organization. And for that reason, I'm going to vote against it.
Okay, thank you, Rick. All right, we have Artie Crockers. Artie?
Yeah, no, I can appreciate the comments being made. I'm in support of this. I think one thing we have to keep in mind or remember is that we had both the Baptist church and the Unitarian church come to us, basically private organizations, if you will, come to us for funding for well, let's not call it maintenance, for repairs or things on the structures under the historical aspect to it. So it's not that we've never funded organizations that are outside of the town themselves. As far as the community farm, it falls under that same type of pathway, I think. One benefit that I think it has a lot of benefits to the community. One benefit is, I would say, in some ways, perhaps to the Conservation Commission itself, to the wetlands, as it's putting some soil back onto something which is incredibly poor soil with little drainage, to put something in there which could have more of an absorption aspect. So maybe less harmful material maybe flowing into the wetlands. I can't sit here and I prove positive of that, but this benefit of maintaining rain when it falls on that property, is this benefit for maintaining it so it slows down or doesn't flow as quickly into the wetlands as it does now potentially. As far as the business model aspect, yeah, there's no question that it is an expansion, and is it a adding different type of business model to it. But in some ways, it is a good different business model expansion to it. It is not them per se that are going to be maintaining the beds and growing them and all the tilling the soil and everything that's going on. It is the people that are renting them. So the expansion is per se, I don't know, I guess I'll use the word database expansion as far as who's coming out there. Obviously, that's minimizing it, of course, the amount of work that's going to be required, but it's not doubling or tripling their work, even though the acreage is increasing by a certain percentage. The amount of work they need to do is not increasing by that same percentage. And as far as the benefit that the community farm has received by the generous allowance of the town, and it is a generous allowance, there's no question about that. Remembering that it is a generous allowance because for what it brings back to the town, it brings back some produce back to the town, back to the community council. It brings that land being used for something that truly would be unused. And it puts into a shape where something can be grown on it versus nothing can be grown on it. Literally, nothing can be grown on that, as stated. I think we can all agree with that. Where something can be grown on that land, there could be some benefits to that land to the community. There could be some benefit to that land as far as, more people going out there to see what's going on. More people will, as they go out there, more people will probably use the dog parks to make that, give it more usability. I think a lot of us I think some of us could understand that could stand to be used more than what it is now. I think there are a lot of benefits to the community, to our community, and the whole Needham community, to have this Needham community farm and have an expansion of it in this way. And again, the expansion is not an expansion of time on their part, the way the acreage is implying, let's say. But I can appreciate the points. But again, we certainly have funded articles that are outside of directly the town organizations themselves. So again, we funded the two churches. I don't know at this point, I don't know if we funded anything else besides the two churches. I don't remember exactly, but I think this falls under that purview, the fact that we have done it before. And this is something that gives a great benefit to the town. Matter of fact, in some ways, I would argue this might deserve more funding than one or two of those that we funded, as far as what it brings back to the community. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, further discussion? Yes, sure. Jean?
Yes. In response to the concern that this is a local nonprofit organization run by volunteers, it's a well-established, long-established nonprofit in our town. And I've been impressed by the materials that have been submitted, the draft budget for this project, the financial reports, the people who've appeared before us. I don't understand why, just based on the fact that it's a nonprofit and not the town, or not, that we should not fund the project. So I'm in favor of the project and hope to vote in favor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Joe. Borges.
Just quickly, Mr. Chair, I think the community farm is obviously a real benefit to the town. I think people that have participated to this point have gotten a great deal out of it. I think it's a natural thing when you have success to build on that success, and I think that's what Joe Leghorn is trying to do. I do believe he's getting a little bit into uncharted waters. He doesn't have maybe the business model that we would like to see in other situations, but we have sent him back time and again to get further information, which he has done. He has brought it back to our satisfaction. I think that his initiative is well worth our support. I think it's a great cause. It involves a lot of local folks, and I think people get a great deal of benefit from it. So I'll be voting in favor of it.
May I add just one thing,
Sure.
just a quick sentence?
Sure.
We will make sure that they have the 10-year license agreement from the town. We
So-
will not fund this unless they have that, correct?
We can make that, I've seen a draft. It is not, has not been executed. So it's not executed tonight. So tonight, though, you're voting on recommending that we fund it.
Do you think the license agreement will be signed by the time of town meeting or some later time and be a condition of the grant?
I think I'm optimistic that it will be.
Okay.
And we could make it, I don't know that we can make it a condition of the grant. I just don't know that, Gene, because that you're saying the entire amount is subject to a lease agreement. So I don't know that we can do that. So I think that
We don't want them spending the money, putting in the beds when they won't have the long-term
Right.
license to use the land.
I don't think that, by the way, the delay is not on the part of the community farm, that they, as soon as we brought that up as an issue, they circulated a revised license agreement that didn't differ substantially at all from the original one that was going to expire, I think, in 24 months.
Right.
Okay. So that's all I can report. I would anticipate that the matter is going to be done by town meeting, but that's all I can report.
Okay.
All right. All right. Hand is up by Rick Simple.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify for the record. I wasn't objecting to them in this article because they're a 503c corporation. Got nothing to do with it. The other thing is I was not objecting to it because we have funded other entities that are not town entities. My point really is that I've always questioned, and I've been consistent since day one, this is an expansion of what they currently do. And there's been no evidence, regardless of their structure, status in the town, there's been no evidence to indicate that they in fact can manage and effectively sell the $200,000 worth of beds and the 150 beds. And there's no, I'm looking at it as we are if you will, a keeper of the taxpayers' dollars. And as such, as laudable as the project is, I just question their capability of being able to do it. They're wonderful people. I agree with everything everybody said. And it's got nothing to do with whether they're a charitable organization, whether they're a group of volunteers, or whether or not they're town entities. I just want to make sure that's clear. I just don't believe that we'd be doing our job if we went ahead and approved it. Hopefully they're not going to fall flat in their face if this goes forward. Thank you.
Okay, and I want to add just one thing, which is that in their budget is they plan on not relying on volunteer staff for this. They are going to have the time of I think that was called a production manager. So there was going to be a paid staff who was going to be available to help launch and maintain the project. I just want to note that. Okay. All right. Any other comments?
Yeah, Peter, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Let's see. Okay, Artie, you can go and then.
No, I just wanted to say that, because I don't want anyone leaving a perception here that there's a comment about whether they could or couldn't, whether they've succeeded or not succeeded. You know, I think I believe there's every reason to believe they've succeeded quite well in what they've been doing over the years. So I don't believe there's been any doubt as far as the capability of what they've done so far. And so I think there was, Rick, I don't believe you you intended.
You're frozen already.
I don't have their.
Artie.
It's a great screensaver.
You see it? Can you still see me? Can you guys see me?
We can see a frozen version of you.
We can hear you.
Do we need to put that in the minutes?
We can you speak?
If he turns off his video, the audio will come through.
How about if you turn off, Reg says, turn off your video and the audio will come through.
I'll see. Anyway, I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure there was no left perception that any of us that they weren't doing a fabulous job of what they were doing. I don't think I don't think that was the intent of anything going on here. I just want to make sure that that's not being left of any perception, because I think we all agree they've been doing a great job as far as we know. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that they won't keep doing a great job. So I don't know if you can hear me or not, but anyway.
Yeah, Artie, we can hear you.
Artie, don't ask for agreements among all of us like that. Just
Sorry,
speak.
Pete. Sorry, Pete.
Okay.
In my
All right,
opinion.
Your opinion. Okay, good. All
Yeah,
right.
Peter, just so that I'm on the record here, I'm not castigating aspersions on the group. This is,
Understood that. We all understand that. Don't worry about
okay.
it. We all know. Okay, it's okay. All right, Reg Foster.
Yeah, I counted up, I think I've done about 40 of these sorts of meetings in the last 2 years. And turning off the video really works on connection problems there.
Okay, but that's not your comment.
That's my comment. My comment is I think there's a compromise here that would make me feel more comfortable. And I was just listening to Gene's comment about the lease. And I would be more assured about how we can handle something like that, because every one of these grants, particularly to a non-Needham town organization, is going to be subject to some sort of grant agreement between the town and the outside entity. And I think it's perfectly acceptable, and I don't see how it would football anything if we approve the 200,000, let's say, but it's subject to to a grant application with XYZ terms. An X term, just building off of what Gene says, is that there's a satisfactory multi-year lease with the town that's been signed before any money is dispersed. That doesn't mean it can't be approved, but it's just not dispersed.
Okay, go ahead.
And secondly, from my earlier comment, I would like to see in that grant agreement something about releasing the funds in tranches. Not, here it is all at once.
But they are going to do it.
Why do I say that?
Well, okay. Okay, go ahead.
I understand what you were going to comment on before I finish there maybe, but more explicitly, just using again an analogy from the private sector, if a small firm comes and says, gee, give me $2 million, and then you basically approve and sign all that paperwork to do it, you very often you don't give it, don't go all at once. You say, here's some milestones, here's the first 500,000, and then you have to go, get those milestones done. And here's the second 500,000. And I don't think we should be specifying what those milestones are or those tranches are. But if I felt that there was the kind of a monitoring and oversight that you described at the start of the meeting, I'd be more comfortable with, voting for the entire 200,000 as opposed to let's us as a committee approve just 100,000 and wait for them to come back, next year and for the next 100,000, that kind of thing. I think that's too much committee micromanagement of the, day-to-day, management of the town. That makes any sense.
Okay, so wait a minute. So now what we have is, so that's going to be, you have a proposed motion to amend the resolution. Is that what it is?
I would propose to amend the motion to add, subject to a grant agreement that requires a satisfactory 10-year lease.
Hold on.
Or not 10, I won't say 10-year, multi-year lease, in terms satisfactory for the town. And
Why don't you
If
call
I
it a mutually,
captured-
why don't you call it a mutually agreed upon multi-year
right.
lease?
thank you.
Um,
I'm just trying to capture Jean's point here.
Yes, there's an important word that needs to be changed.
Go ahead.
This is a license agreement. A town can't grant a lease.
Yeah,
of
I know.
its
That's,
land
yeah,
without a
we
town
had like,
meeting
we had
involved.
like,
It's very
we had,
complicated.
I got.
I just want to make sure the
Mhm.
minutes and so forth.
Right.
We,
Yeah.
okay,
Use the word
it's a license agreement, okay.
I stand corrected. And further, subject to releasing the funds in a series of tranches, that correspond with milestones of getting the project done.
Okay, so my,
Oh,
So
under
it-
the direction of the town manager, not
Okay.
us.
the latter part is, the funds aren't released until, it requires evidence of the expenditure of funds.
Well, that's what it is. I've had these agreements up until
Yeah.
now. They're very primitive
Okay.
right now. They basically, you send them an invoice, and if it, seems to fit the, purpose of the warrant article or language, then it gets paid.
Okay, so that, all right, so let's go back, that's fine.
And
Then
the
let's,
warrant articles themselves are, very simple,
right, okay, so
2
why
or
don't,
3 sentence
okay.
things.
So let's just wordsmith that for the last part. So it's a motion to amend, and that, so the grant would be, the last clause would be subject to a grant agreement that requires the parties to enter, the town and the requires the execution of a mutually agreed upon multi-year license for the NCF property at Pine Street. And grant amounts to be released pursuant to mutually.
Pursuant to a project plan mutually agreed between the town and the recipient.
Okay, a mutually agreed to project plan.
Yeah.
Okay,
I do want to note that there is a level of audit before the invoices are
Right.
paid. They get sent to me and then town accountant, and we both review them.
okay, so that means, that's good, because we can all make this work with the, I
May
think,
I comment on her comment,
sure,
which is, yes, but, if you have a project plan, you have a framework that's been agreed to up front, then you perform that audit against that.
Mhm.
As opposed to them just showing up every month saying, okay, here's some invoices for some manure that showed up or some fence that has been built.
No, I understand.
May I ask who will be agreeing to the project plan? It will be this committee?
The town town manager does it.
it gets taken out of our hands when town meeting
Yeah.
authorizes.
Okay.
So then we're gonna keep this simple, but the funding will be pursuant to an appropriate project
Mutually
plan.
agreeable project plan.
Okay. Okay,
And I wouldn't say that should be in the warrant, by the way, our language or anything like that. Sorry.
well, all right, so you don't want it in the warrant.
Well, I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, so
These are our motions to town meeting, right?
Yeah, these are the, well, I guess this is our motion.
These motions don't define what the warrant article.
That's true.
What our motion will, I've been spending time on this today, Mr. Chair.
Right.
I've been spending time on this, Chair. It affects what goes into the article information blurb that goes under the.
Okay.
See what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I get it.
Because I've just been focusing.
The italicized stuff.
The italicized.
A brief summary,
Yeah.
if you might say.
Okay, there's another hand up. It's Laura Dorf.
Hi, sorry, I should have asked this before. My question is, there's a board of directors for this organization. And there's a treasurer, an assistant treasurer. I'm assuming these people have some financial background. I'm trying to Google them and find out about them, but I have to believe there's some level of competence because they've been handling funds for some period of time. Is there any reason to believe that we don't have confidence in this group to? Does anybody have any reason to believe these people can't manage this funding? That's what a board does.
I mean, the other thing that you're expressing a concern that hasn't been raised by any of us. The concern has been, are they going to have people to work on the leased beds? I mean, no one's really raised a realistic concern about whether or not they're going to be able to get the vendor out to construct the beds. Right? That's,
I'm not raising that concern.
you're not raising that.
No.
Right. I don't know that anyone has. But
That had nothing to do with my question.
your solution is to a problem that hasn't been articulated.
My concern is that what I expressed at the beginning, which is that my experience would say it would be better to release the funds, 100,000 this year and 200,000, another 100,000 next year, or 120,000 this year because you have to build the whole fence first, and or something like that. But that's way too late. We can't micromanage that.
Right.
But what I am suggesting is that the town manager, personnel, reporting to the town manager, personnel can say, okay, what is your project plan for getting this done? And then monitor that on a month-to-month basis as the invoices. come
Okay,
in.
I don't want to micromanage them either. So I think that what we could say is that if we were subject to a grant agreement, that would include an execution of a multi-year license and funding pursuant to a mutually agreed to project plan.
Yes.
Okay, can we-
Mr. Derby, please first.
yes, Mr. Dermody.
Appreciate your concerns, Reg. I'm a little concerned we may be overstepping our bounds. I think the lease agreement isn't, but I think my understanding of how this committee works is we discuss the money, the numbers. The relationship is between the town and the proponent. We get town meeting to vote up or down on an amount of money that then goes to our town manager and our staff, and they do those kinds of things. I don't know that we've done this with any other project.
So we've
And-
had a grant agreement where we did that with the Baptist church and we dabbled in it. We were a little too active in my mind.
Okay.
But we were not, I don't know that we stayed a lot in our lane. We were pretty active clients when it came to that grant agreement.
Perhaps because.
But all of that being said,
Yeah.
the lesson that I learned from that was that we had our town council, Chris Heap, was experienced, and his grant agreement was better than what we were proposing.
Right.
So it had pretty good safeguards in it.
And one last thing I'll add real quick is that, should we not be saying these things about every project? And I don't think so.
Right. So, and because the funding is always subject to a grant agreement. But I think that what we could say is communicate to I think that we can say we'd like it subject to a grant agreement, which would include one thing that we've said, and Gene's said this from the beginning, which would include a license, a multi-year execution, a multi-year license, or I said a memorandum of understanding regarding a multi-year license. I think that's what the two things that we offered from the beginning.
That I'd be comfortable with, not the latter clauses.
The latter clause.
Just the very detailed.
I'm not saying that we should approve the license agreement, but only that it exists.
Yes, I understand. Yep.
Yeah.
Agree.
Okay, so now we have a further amendment, which is that we just that we approve this, but it's subject to a grant agreement for, that includes a multi-year license agreement between the town and NCF.
And we're going to, Chair, we're stopping there on the,
All right, so now we have a main motion, the Foster motion, which includes both the motion to, which makes a reference to the license agreement and funding over time and the grant. And now we have Cecilia.
I should just make a comment that any changes to the warrant, I need to get to the town manager's office by 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, I know, but
When does she
unless,
open?
And we're
I
looking at
understand.
12
Well, we're
hours from
doing
now.
the best we can. Okay, all right, and then we have the final, then we have the second amendment, which is just a reference to a grant agreement, which includes a multi-year license agreement between the town and CF. Okay. So now, I guess we're going to have discussion on all three items. We have the main motion, the Foster amendment, and the Barnes amendment.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
So there's Kristen on this one.
point of order, there's no second. I have not heard a second on either amendment.
Okay, good. So let's go with first. That's a good point. Thank you, Kristen. We have Foster's motion. He's made the motion. Can we have a second on that?
Is Foster's motion the one that also includes the project plan?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to understand.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I have a second on the motion?
Yeah.
Does anyone want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, and then we have the second amendment, and that would be the Barnes amendment. Okay, second on that amendment. Okay, that's Dermody.
I'll second that.
You second.
Dermody.
Okay, so now we're going to have discussion on all three. Main motion, motion to amend, and second motion to amend. Okay, any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to vote. I think I can vote. We can go with the main motion first.
No, you have
No, you always do the reverse order.
Oh,
Second amendment, then the first.
Okay, got it. All right,
amendment
got it.
of the
Okay,
main
got it.
motion.
Fine. Second, the Barnes motion, the Barnes amendment, the second amendment, which is a grant agreement referencing a license between the two parties. We're gonna have a roll call vote. Barnes,
I,
Dermody,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Zimbo,
Aye.
Crocker.
Aye.
Dorfman,
Aye.
and Pingator votes aye.
Oh,
Crystal.
Oh, Crystal,
Aye.
I thought that you did vote. aye.
No.
I'm sorry, Chris. I really apologize.
Looking out for you.
Okay, so that disposes of the resolution. And so we will go on to next one is, and thank you everyone for that. 13 years of town meeting, and I couldn't figure out if you started with the first one or the last
We
one.
won't tell Mr. Fee.
Please don't tell him. Okay,
Stacy's
I am
wrong.
administratively disqualified now to ever
Except for
play
the
that role. Okay. All right, so now let's go on to the appropriations for the Community Preservation Fund.
Wait a minute.
Oh, now you have to do Foster.
No,
Did we
we're in the
vote?
middle of, we haven't approved.
But we
No,
were
no,
unanimous on all, but there's.
No,
What you approved is the second amendment
yeah.
to the
And now
first
you have to-
amendment,
Joe Barnes' amendment. Is
to
it
my
what-
amendment.
is
So
it
now
on-
And then
we
you have to go to
approve
Okay, okay,
his.
I'm sorry.
the first amendment, which is the Joe Barnes amendment for the license, and the Foster amendment to
Anyway,
that main motion to, and the Foster amendment is subject to a project plan, speaking just briefly.
okay, so now I'm really embarrassing myself.
It's okay.
What's our next?
We're here for you.
Okay, sorry about that. What is our
Foster
next?
amendment.
The
as
Foster
amended.
amendment's the next one up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So project plan plus license.
Okay, great. The Foster. Barnes.
Would you repeat the amendment, please?
Yeah, this is the Foster Amendment, which is, this is the license plus project plan.
Otherwise, there's not either one of them.
Barnes,
nay,
Dermody,
Nay.
Foster,
Aye.
McKnight,
Nay.
Gerson,
Nay.
Zamboni,
aye,
Crocker,
Aye.
Dorfman,
nay,
and the chair votes no. So the nays have it. Motion fails. All right, so now we're on the main motion. And that is.
As amended.
as-
It's not been amended.
Yes, it has been amended with Mr. Barnes' amendment.
No, because he was
No, that's-
amending mine. You voted it down, and you voted down my amendment.
Oops, yeah.
Wait, no.
Yeah, he's
hold
right.
on. So we
You're
voted
voting
yes for
that
his,
way.
but since we voted no for yours, it crosses his out?
Yeah, he was amending mine.
Well, we can
Nobody
make.
No, it was a separate amendment.
We can make a new,
No, they're not separate.
Mr. Chair, I think we're voting on the clean amendment as it appears on the page now.
That's not an amendment. That's-
No, I'm sorry, the
motion.
motion.
Okay, so we,
And I don't
had-
think we want.
Okay, so what's done is done. We'll just go right to the main motion.
That's right.
Sounds good.
That's not how I do it.
oppose
New
this
amendment.
Barnes- You can't oppose the Barnes amendment
brand new,
on a
right now.
standalone basis
Right.
by itself.
say that again.
Why not?
Yep.
What?
If I may try, so because he was amending a motion that we defeated. So if you defeat a motion that was amended, the amendment goes away. We can now,
Just vote on the motion.
Oh, we can
yes,
also.
or we can
Wait,
now
wait,
make a
wait,
new
wait.
amendment,
Oh, we
his
can
No, no,
make
amendment.
no, we're
a
gonna vote, we're gonna
amendment.
listen.
That's
If
his
we have that
amendment.
clarification, then we should have,
Does people agree on what I said?
yeah, that's
No.
fine. Some confusion.
Procedurally, I suppose you're right, but, you know,
I
We're
would
so
think-
close, gang. We can make it all by 9. We're so close.
we're voting separately.
Okay, so what I would propose is that we can, if we, I suppose we could have a motion to reconsider the second, the,
Or a brand new amendment? That
Yes.
it copies exactly his words.
He is, Bob is right,
yeah, we could do that.
and that's the simplest.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, so now
Make it
we're,
again.
I will do that.
Speaking of somebody who's been reading Robert's Rules of Order. for the
yeah,
last few months,
fortunately, you're
I
right.
have been
I would,
actually quite familiar.
I would
with
like
this,
to offer an
unfortunately.
amendment to the main motion that it include the stipulation about the license agreement being mutually agreeable to the parties.
A grant agreement, which includes a multi-year.
The language we
license.
had.
Okay, good.
I will second that.
Okay, good. So now we'll have a vote on that. Motion to approve. Okay. Barnes,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
Gerson,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Zamboni,
I think I,
Crocker,
Aye, aye,
Dorfman,
Aye, sir.
Dorfman,
oh, sorry, I didn't understand that, aye,
and the chair votes aye. Okay, so now that disposes of it, correct?
And
that disposes of the amendment.
Disposes
Now
of
we
the
have to
amendment.
vote on the article
Now we have to vote on the article too?
As amended.
Yep.
As amended.
as amended.
Everybody together.
Yeah.
As
Yeah, here we
amended.
go. We'll help you with
The
it.
idea.
Teamwork makes the
Okay,
dream
here we
work.
go. Barnes,
Cecilia will get the
Aye.
names read correctly here.
Dermody,
Aye.
Some century.
Foster,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Zamboni,
Nay,
Crocker.
Did you call my name, Peter?
I did.
Aye.
Dorfman,
aye,
Ursel,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, so now that.
Now,
disposes.
who will be presenting?
I think Artie should present.
Okay, I'll present it.
Okay, now, I think now we're disposed, now we've disposed.
Yeah, on to the next.
All right, Article 15, FY 2023. This is appropriations of the Community Preservation Fund, CPC. And this is a motion to consider increasing community housing restricted funds transfer from 11% to 22%. And this is for FY 2023, the projected receipts for this year. Similar to the motion that we've had last year. And so, but we wanted to, I think we've had this kind of discussion. We put together our projected financial summaries based on the assumption that we're going to be funding community housing at 20%, but then we say, or 11% or 20%, but we bump it up to 22% based on estimated receipts. Okay. Why don't I make the motion and then we can have our discussion. Okay. So this is Article 15. I move to recommend that the annual contribution to the Community Housing Reserve be increased this year from 11% to 22% for FY 2023.
Second.
Okay, discussion. All right, hearing none.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make probably an obvious statement, but this is a motion that we'll have to approve year over year over year, but it is assumed in the financial plan that it will continue for the foreseeable future.
Okay, good. All right, everyone understands, that, right? We're going to approve this year to year, but we've been planning on this for the foreseeable future. Okay, we'll have our Barnes,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Zamboni,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Dorfman,
Aye.
Zoll,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, so next we're at Article 16. Now, Article 16
Mr.
is,
Chair?
Yes,
Can I volunteer to present this?
sure.
Just to speed things along.
There's Article 16 on this.
Really?
It's really the last bullet right here on the
It's
last,
all right.
on the agenda,
Not
the
that
very
we're-
last one.
Okay,
Well, Starburst. what do
your
you think?
team. Thanks, Starburst.
You know
Or
what?
Snickers.
I know.
Next year you can do it.
Well,
I got one.
we're waiting.
Help you out here.
Rick, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, am I muted?
No, you're not
We haven't
talking.
heard you at all.
About what?
You're supposed
Your
to present-
motion.
you're supposed to talk about Article 16 and make a motion.
I am?
You just asked.
I think he meant a town meeting.
Oh,
I'm talking about presenting Article 15 at town meeting.
oh, I'm
Sorry, in
sorry.
a team
Oh,
player.
absolutely.
And
I didn't
where
realize
is-
that. Did you?
Yes.
You did?
Now you're talking.
Okay,
I thought that's what I was volunteering to do.
thank you. I didn't realize that.
I
thought you were
wasn't trying to usurp your power.
Got it.
I was just volunteering to speak at town meeting.
I look at you so
Peter
funny.
didn't take it that way, don't worry.
I got it. All right, so that's a great, Rick.
Real quick, sorry, point of order. I don't see number 16 anywhere.
It's at the very last part of the agenda.
I
And I
don't-
suppose it's
The backside.
intended to be the
There's no-
last
there's no
one on
number
this
16.
list.
No number
too.
there either.
It's meant to be the last one on this list.
So I printed
financial
out
a
warrant
different
article.
sheet.
the agenda that came in at the 5 o'clock packet, so maybe it wasn't on the earlier one.
It's the,
You're on the motion.
You're looking at motions. You have to go to your
okay, sorry.
Your agenda.
your agenda.
Got it.
Okay, this is Article 16. And this is an appropriation to Community Preservation Fund supplement. The basis of this motion is that we make allocations to reserve funds based on anticipated receipts for the upcoming year. Some years the receipts are higher than we anticipate. Last year was one of them, driven by the increase in the state match. So as a result, in order for two of the funds to meet the minimum requirement of 10% historic preservation and open space, we required an additional allocation of, think of approximately $25,000 or $26,000. Now, our community housing, because we funded it beyond the state minimum, the statutory minimum, It's, if we ended up below 20%, but above 10%. So it's going to require action by us, consistent with what we have done in the past, to allocate additional funds so that the amount of the actual receipts for 2022 are at double the amount that we would be required to fund. And so we're required at 10%. And what I think that we've done this in the past, but what I had asked was that we fund it such that it hits 20%, double. Okay. So that would be an increase. So then so our warrant article would reflect that. If you look at your memo from Dave, I believe it's Saturday memo, it shows that the amount to transfer from general reserve to the community housing would be $48,749. And then the amounts to transfer to historic reserves would be $29,067. And then open space would be $24,375. Okay. So this is another thing, another issue that is both we have to allocate to the reserve funds, but we're also focused on the idea that we're trying to double the amount that we're putting into community housing. Okay. So that's what the warrant article
Can I make
is.
a point of information? So I think we should be referring to Dave's Saturday memo, not to the wording that's in the agenda, which is somewhat incorrect. If you look at Dave's Saturday memo, if everybody has that, in the very bottom at page 2, he says there are 2 things we can vote on.
Yes.
Thing 1 is just on the 2 items that we have to do, which is historic resources and the open space, because we otherwise won't meet the 10% threshold. Or the second thing is we can true up the 20% from last year. And that second motion is there. So I think, the motion I will make the motion.
You can read it. Why don't you read it?
Interest in that.
Sure.
Obviously. So, I make a motion that we approve the, what do we call it, truing up of the shortfalls or something like that.
Supplement, Richard. Oh, supplement.
What's the right wording? Yeah.
Supplement.
This second option presented by, which is to propose $29,067 for historic reserve, $24,375 to open space, and $48,749 to the community housing reserve.
Second.
All right, discussion. Hearing none. Barnes.
Aye.
Dermody.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
McKnight.
Aye.
Zamboni.
Aye.
Crocker.
Aye.
Dorfman.
Aye.
Ursel. Aye. And the chair opposed. Okay, thank you, Rich. All right, so now we are on to turning back to your first page of your agenda.
Mr. Chair.
Oh yeah, we need a presenter.
No, Mr. Chair. Yes. However, it needs to be transferred out of a certain fund. That's what the motion.
So they're going to have, it all comes out of general reserve.
Okay, that's in the motion then. And I'll put it in the motion.
Motion should be that it transfers out of general reserve.
Yeah, the 102,191 that's mentioned in the memo.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Kristen.
I will take this and make sure that this language is in the warrant.
Yes, that's what I intended to.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's a good catch.
Be in
And
the
then,
motion.
and then the presenter, we can have, Rick, you want to do that? You can.
No, usually that falls to the chair.
Do it then.
Whatever you want, Peter.
I'll do it because I'll do the finance. Yeah, that makes sense.
It goes along with the other one.
Okay. Now we're back to first page of our agenda, FY 2023-01, Article 19. This is the Needham Housing Authority Property Survey. Okay. So what you should have in your packet is a opinion letter from our town council addressing the issue of eligibility for the property survey, which can be summarized as I'm not going to give you the reasons, but that what is eligible for funding under CPA is a survey with respect to High Rock homes only, or High Rock estates, the cottages at High Rock only. You should have also received in your packet a response memo from Reg Foster addressing the issue of eligibility. And you should have also received in your packet an email from our town council stating, in essence, that the memo from Mr. Foster hasn't changed his opinion, which remains that the only element of the survey eligible for funding under CPA concerns High Rock estates or homes.
Point of information, I have not received that email.
It's in the packet.
What packet?
It's in the packet that I sent out at 5.
And it was sent out earlier.
And it was earlier. It was earlier.
It was sent out earlier in the day.
I did not see
I
it.
don't have the email.
Sent out at 3:17.
All right, if we have an extra copy, I will give you mine.
It wasn't a separate, it was not a separate letter regarding the survey. Oh, yeah, it's 2301.
No, I
No, there should, all right, hold
I did
on.
not get the
There
email.
should be an email that's, the timing of it is 3:44 PM. It's a one-page email from Chris Heap informing us that he's reviewed the 2 letters from the Housing Authority and that the information provided doesn't change his decision, but he gives some detail to it. So
From
now,
who?
are you saying that
Cecilia?
who has this email?
Oh, I have his
pull it up
letters, but
online.
not.
Let's
the
put it up on the
No,
email.
no, I just want to know when it was sent, that's all.
Put it up on the screen.
If it was in the 5 o'clock packet, I did not look in the 5 o'clock packet because the transmittal email said the 5 o'clock packet includes everything that you've been sent before. So I didn't bother to look at it because I already examined everything that had been sent before.
Same with me.
But I did not realize there was some, and I actually, preparing for this meeting, went back through the 6 emails that I received from Cecilia to make sure that I had everything. I had done that
All right, let's
before
put-
5
let's-
o'clock.
That's fine. Let's put the letter up on the, let's put the email.
What is 3:17? What's that date? Is that in the email
So
The
the time,
date-
that's the time today it came out.
from Kristen,
No, it's from
Cecilia.
from Cecilia?
Mhm.
No, it's 3:44 from Chris Heap to me and to.
3:44.
No. The email is from
I understand.
Christopher Heap. The
Really doesn't
communication from Celia is 3:17, which includes the email.
I didn't hear that, but
Kristen, do you know what I mean?
I have a 3:17 from Cecilia, but it has just the Saturday Dave Davidson.
Let's get this up here. Let's blow that up.
Memo.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
I don't
working
have- I
on
only
it on my
have-
computer
It's
right
okay.
now.
It's okay. You don't have it. Okay, I
Yeah.
understand. You don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to read. Can somebody
We're gonna-
read
I'm
it?
we're gonna-
working on
she's
blowing
pulling
it
it up
up.
now.
I'm just not
Oh,
working
thank
on
you.
my computer, so it's
Sure.
taking a little longer.
Give it to Reg. Oh, no, this is actually, you got the wrong email. That's from Dave Davidson.
Mr. Chair, the email from Christopher Heap was sent at 3:44. It's included in the package that Cecilia sent out at 5 o'clock. It's about, I don't know, probably, it's page 46 of 57 in the packet that Cecilia sent out, if that's of help to anyone.
It's just not letting me download it. This is not a help.
I got it, Cecilia. I got it.
Well,
Hold on.
Mr. Chair, we could just take what Rick says is what happened.
Wow.
Um, What is the email? say?
Kristen said.
Can't we have it up on the screen?
She's trying to get it right now.
And then, but if it's not large enough, just somebody read it out loud.
I can read it right now. Read it a
There you
couple
go, Kristen.
Thank you.
All right, I will read, while we're waiting, I'm gonna read it. Okay. Hello, Peter. I have reviewed the two letters from the Needham Housing Authority dated March 29th, 2022. These two letters were submitted in response to my letters dated March 28th, 2022. And now we can see it. Here we are.
Oh, yeah. No,
Can we increase it? So there we go. There you go. Okay. Okay, there we go. There it is. Are we ready? Yeah. Have you read it?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I might ask a question?
Sure.
If we were to agree with town council, how would that affect the amount of money we would be approving under this article?
So I saw a reference, this was an estimated amount, but I'll put this on reg, but I thought I saw an estimated amount for the full cost of the survey of High Rock of $73,000. I don't know if that's a real number still or not. You can look on your,
I would just look at the spreadsheet.
Yeah, look at your
I
spreadsheet.
submitted,
Okay.
To the, so I'm looking back to the full amount that led to the 50% ask for 123,632. 100 feet, you know that number by heart by now, I think, after the FinCom. If you look at the breakdown in that, the High Rock portion of it was $81,978 full cost.
okay. And so there, I saw an earlier estimate in your materials of 73,000, but that was an estimate. That's fine.
We amended it, we added the
That's fine.
contingency to
Fine.
it, if you remember.
Yeah. You added what? Contingency. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
there were
All right, so
questions.
the full amount of the cost of High Rock survey is, say it again, Reg?
81,978.
81,978.
So, Mr. Chair, then, based on that and the opinion from town council, would it be appropriate to reduce the amount of money being funded on this particular article to that 81,000 and change?
We can make a motion to amend the resolution. We can restrict it to spending on High Rock. And we can also agree to fund the full amount of the survey. We're free to do that. with respect to High Rock. So we could reduce the net amount from 120, approximately 123 to approximately 83.
And note that the original amount requested was 62.5.
That was all, but that was
That was a long time
50%.
ago, yeah.
And
That
that
was
was
50%.
That was
and then they
50%,
were
and then it
proposing
went up.
100%.
Yeah.
Sure.
So Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to modify the amount approved under this article to match the High Rock funds at 81, whatever the number is.
Reg, what's the number?
81,978.
So it's the full amount. And so the funds would come from from the community housing reserve. And it would fund the survey, the full amount of the cost of the survey for High Rock homes and the amount of, fund the amount of the survey for High Rock homes in the amount of 83,000.
81.
81,978.
Yeah, that would be my motion.
I will second that motion.
Well, second.
Okay, so, all right, let's have discussion.
Well, I'm not there, obviously. I did not know that there had been a response from the town council, so I had come with a different, different proposal, which was contained at the end of the, contained, sorry, I'll speak up. Contained at the end of both of the two letters that we received. We're just dealing with the first one here, and the two responses, which was that that the NHA response be delivered to town council for consideration.
Right, so
Now, I delivered that response at approximately 7:15 this morning.
he got it at about 8:15.
Yeah, and so what I'm inferring happened is that he has received it and considered it
Yes,
and rejected it.
yes. He says it in the email. Yes,
Well, I didn't know any of
And he
that. They
spent-
told this like at 9 o'clock tonight, okay?
I-
So
it was
I'm just-
in your package.
No,
The
it was
pack,
not.
no, it was at 5 o'clock. It was in the
Come on.
package.
I think that is not a good procedure.
Oh, that's fine,
No,
Reg.
no, it was not in my packet. I received a packet that said, here's everything that was sent before.
Okay, what,
This is a fact, and I think this, I'm not prepared, obviously. I did not know that was there.
Okay.
You did not send it to me. Heath did not send it to me. Cecilia did not send it to me. It was in the packet at 5:15 or 10, whenever the packet went out, but I did not notice it on page 30, 46 or whatever it is on there.
okay,
I don't doubt it's there.
okay, so
I
I.
just did not notice it was there. So
look, I got this-
I'm just trying to say, I'm not prepared.
Okay,
to-
I received it at 4:45 and every committee member received it by 5.
15, yes.
Fine. Okay,
Right.
fine. All right, so you don't have any comments.
No, I do have a comment, but, I think, I would like to add this matter, the way this has been handled, to another agenda item for the improvement to our procedures that we're going to be doing. I think doing this, first of all, I received the Chris Heath opinions at around 3:45 Monday afternoon on the 28th. And I'm, with a major scramble, responded to it 7:15 this morning. It seems that this is not a good process.
Okay, I did, in fairness to everyone and to me, I called you on Friday. I told you what the opinion was going to say. I put you on notice.
Oh, you already prearranged the opinion?
I told you what Reg, really.
No,
You
let me
wanna
just
start-
finish my
seriously.
comment. If
I want you
may.
to be
May-
fair to this committee and fair to me. Okay?
How have I been unfair?
Don't, Reg,
Can I just finish?
no, because the opinion was not finished. You can finish after I respond, okay? No, the opinion was not preordained, but he orally communicated to me, verbally communicated to me that he did not view this article or the other one as eligible under the CPA. I called you up and communicated that to you. I did that in fairness to you. I did it as soon as I learned about it. Okay, so I want the committee to know that. When I received the opinion, I sent it to you. Okay, now you want to finish?
Yeah, I was not saying that you didn't do that.
You didn't mention it.
I was interrupted while I was making my comment.
You did not mention it. Wanted to clarify.
I stand corrected.
Okay,
What Peter mentioned is absolutely true. On the 25th of March, I received a verbal heads up, and I appreciate that. And I'm criticizing that you didn't provide that verbal heads up. In the larger sense, what I was trying to say is, I think this legal review step should happen.
absolutely.
Well, that was what I was trying to say. I was not trying to criticize you here. May I continue, or would you like to comment?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. I believe that this sort of legal step belongs at the beginning of the process. When we, in December, screen the applications and determine whether they meet the requirements of the CPA funding, guidelines or not. In fact, I believe that's already is our process. I don't know if that has to be changed, but certainly we should put it on the Laura Dorfman list. And I don't think it should be taking place. Let's just say, argument, be starting on the 25th of March or the 21st of March, which is when I had a conversation with Mr. Heath. That I don't believe, and I'm not an expert, by the way. I'm not an expert on the nuances of CPA funding. I rely on experts, but I'm not an expert myself. So I think there's a better way of doing the process, and it's not this way.
Okay, so
That's all I was trying to say.
thank you. But if you, I want to note too, for the record, that at the beginning of this meeting, under chairman's announcements, I stated that one of the things that we were going to do on a going forward basis was that all of the applications would be forwarded to town council upon receipt to address issues of eligibility. Okay? I hope everyone heard that, because I made that was perhaps my first bullet point that I said.
Maybe for this reason.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Of
So we're in
course.
100% agreement.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
But I actually did not know that this email was there at page 46.
Okay, but, okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move on, please. We move the.
Thank you. All right,
So that's my comment.
thank you. All right, any further comments? Okay, let's have a vote. And this is on the motion to amend. And this is the,
So motion to amend.
So this is the main motion. Mr.
Amount
Chair.
the amount.
this is the amendment.
Remaining
How do we
1,800.
characterize that, Kristen? Do we
It's a
just-
main motion. The main motion is because in a main motion, you can say, I don't want to fund it at all. I want to fund it $3 million. I want to, whatever. You can make it
Main
whatever.
motion, it's the main motion. Okay. Barnes,
I,
Dermody,
Aye.
Foster.
can I vote last?
Sure. McKnight,
Aye.
Zimbone,
Aye.
Crocker,
Aye.
Dorfman,
Aye.
Aye.
Foster. Chair votes Foster. Go ahead.
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
Someone just confirm the amount so I can edit the warrant.
Reg?
81,978.
Okay.
Okay. Article 18, FY 2023-02, Needham Housing Authority schematic design vending chambers. Well, liaisons, any update on that? Okay.
I'm sorry, who's presenting that last article, Peter?
Oh,
No,
okay, so the liaisons for that are Dorfman, Gersel, and Zimbone. Zimbone's already carrying a load, so,
I'll do it.
okay, Chris Gersel. Wait a second.
Article 1 is going to be presented by Chris.
That's
Article 19, it's application O.
property survey.
property survey. Okay,
The
now,
article numbers changed slightly in the most up-to-date warrant, so, yeah.
Hold on.
I get it right now.
okay,
This is our guy.
Article 18. Or, well, this is FY 2302. This is the schematic design for the chambers. Okay. Any updates? Okay, hearing none, let's make our motion. And this would be, I recommend to move to recommend funding on the Needham Housing Authority's request for $1,386,000 for the pre-development of Linden Chambers under the Affordable Housing Designation. We transferred from the CPA Community Housing Reserve. Have a second.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. All right, hearing none, let's open. Barnes,
Aye.
Dermott,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Zimbo,
Aye.
Rucker.
Aye.
Dorfman,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, who seconded that?
It was
Chris.
Chris.
And who's presenting?
And
Okay,
who's presenting this one?
all right, so now we have Dorf,
I'll present again if, might as well hit them both at the same time.
okay,
If you want somebody else, I will.
okay, this is, well, we have, Laura hasn't had an opportunity.
Want to share?
Why don't we, Laura, it's between you and Chris. You guys decide.
I'm happy
Laura?
to do it. Whatever works best is fine with me.
I would gladly let her.
Okay, Laura, you're up. Okay, next is FY 2023-03. This is the purchase of East Militia Heights property. And Reg, we've received a letter withdrawn. It is withdrawn. Now we are at FY 2023-04. Needham Housing Authority Assistant Director position. This is also the subject of an exchange of letters and memos. Also a correspondence from our town council and a response by Reg Foster on behalf of Housing Authority, and then a reply to that in the form of an email from Christopher Heap. So we can discuss this. We could,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
sure.
My motion, in light of town council's advice, that this particular article be voted down.
I was thinking about this because, well, actually,
That would be handy.
I think that you need a majority vote to recommend for funding. So I think we would probably best to put it up for,
How about if I reword it and say that we funded at $0?
we can't do
Would that satisfy the reverse?
I guess, well, I need my, Kristen, these procedures where we think, where someone wants to vote
May I
it
make
down.
a point of information?
Point, yep. Go ahead.
Having spent a lot of time with Robert's Rules of Order lately.
Can't hear.
That's okay.
Yeah, the point of information is that, that we're voting on whether to approve a funding article that has been presented and been considered since December 1st. And so the vote has to be whether to approve it, and then if everybody's going to reject it, that's what has to happen.
I think Reg is right.
Not that I believe that's the right answer.
I think that that's right.
Thanks for the rubber.
Okay, so I think that we just have to go forward with the motion. I'll make the motion to fund, and then we're gonna have an up or down vote on it. Okay,
And
All right.
discuss, we'll just
and we'll discuss.
discuss.
Yes, okay, so,
Brief discussion.
so then we will have, excuse me.
So I withdraw my motion
Okay, thanks.
because it was improper.
I'm second it. Jeez.
Okay, so I'll move to recommend funding on the Needham Housing Authority's request.
Why don't I do it?
Oh, you want to
Get
do
you
that?
off the hook.
Thank
All right.
Well, played.
I recommend that CPC vote to approve the Needham Housing Authority's request for funding up to the amount of $97,500 for the purposes of staffing a new assistant executive director position for the purposes of supporting the preservation and rehabilitation redevelopment of affordable housing in Needham. That's my motion.
Okay,
Second it.
all right. Artie's made a
Artie
second.
second. I second it.
Artie makes a second. Okay. All right, so discussion.
I want to make sure I understand fully the motion. For the CPA funds can be, I'm looking at the letter, can be spent on the rehabilitation and restoration that is required or created as provided in this section. All right, so what were the words you used?
For the preservation and redevelopment of affordable housing in Needham.
Redevelopment.
Pursuant, if you want to add it to the Needham housing modernization redevelopment. But I didn't say that. It makes it clear to me. So we can take that as a friendly amendment here. With a friendly second from Chris, I think.
No, the RTA.
In there.
Yeah. Chris is very friendly.
I'd say it's my mantra.
So we have a motion and a second. I will speak to it as a proponent of the motion here, which I get to go
I want
first.
to make sure I
I
understand.
have
it
worded
fully.
that motion, just so everybody has full disclosure, to reflect the serious disagreement, good faith, I think, disagreement, but, substantial disagreement that, lies between, in the last 48 hours, this has been going on, between our town council, who's, the town expert on this matter, and the experts that I employed, because obviously I did not draft those rebuttal memos myself. And anybody thinks I did, thank you for the compliment, but obviously, disagreements obviously do happen in matters like this. But I've worded the motion that reflects the rebuttal or response.
Yes.
So that's what I just wanted to clarify for GA.
Yeah, and also I want to point out that that doesn't reflect the application or the presentations that you made, because the words that you used were modernization and redevelop.
Well, I think it does.
Okay.
So that's my motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So I don't think that it complies, it doesn't really comport with the language of the application. We'll leave it at that. That's my comment.
Hand raised.
You have a hand raised?
Okay, Laura Dorf.
I guess my issue was looking at the job description that was provided. It isn't in this. It contains language that kind of is consistent with what the town council is saying, in my opinion. I think that might have been maybe one of the issues we should have looked at in the beginning.
All right, Artie Crocker.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that at the beginning, perhaps the language should have been looked at, but I many times I go with intent, and we're talking tomatoes. The intent of how this person is going to be used is to greatly supplement the work needed to implement essentially the capital plan that the Needham Housing Authority is going to do. They're going to be they're going to be working on that, and that's, we're looking to fund that to make a huge step on going forward for the Needham Housing Authority. So I believe that the intent is correct on how this money is being used and how it should be funded, or why it should be funded. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion. All right. hearing-
Yes, further discussion, please. I am looking at the application, and I think it can be interpreted to me, not quite the way our town council quoted it, but that it's to assist with the current, all this work will place an additional workload on the current executive director. And consultants strongly recommended that the NHA authorize a new assistant executive director position. So the work that was described in the application was the modernization and development initiative, which was focused both on overhauling 296 of our existing units and adding 121 new units of deeply affordable housing. So you do have that, at least the adding 121 units of deeply affordable housing in Needham. And now the motion is that that the person who's to be hired is to work on the preservation and redevelopment of community housing. Those are the words you use?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think it's not departing that much, except the overhauling of 296 of our existing units is not what this person would be working on. Am I expressing that correctly?
I'm going to try to answer that in one sentence.
Oh,
You know,
I think I know what you're going to say.
What I'm going to
Yeah.
say is that town council focused on a part of, what can be eligible and not eligible, and ruled the whole thing can't be eligible because it contained a part of it is ineligible.
Mhm.
And the part of the, but there are, I will just use one example. We came before the CPC 3 years ago with a $1.5 million proposal because we had the ice dam problems and they ruined the exterior sheathing of the building because of construction defects. And under the guidelines, that's absolutely fundable
Preservation.
as preservation, right? Whereas if you go in and replace a kitchen inside, it's not fundable. And because the Seabeds and Cooks project had both components in it, he said 100% of it is not fundable.
So,
under the
all right,
CPA.
that's really,
May
okay, I don't know, because now, here's what I was trying to avoid, okay? It's not fair, actually, it's not really being fair to the committee to spend time characterizing our council's opinion. And in fact, I think you're mischaracterizing it. Because he made
I'm
it,
sure I am.
you,
Let
So-
me tell you why I'm sure, because nobody's had a chance to review any of this.
Oh.
Because it's happened in the last 48 hours.
okay.
And
So-
that is a flaw in the process that we have
Okay.
right now.
So, it's, I just want to say that that's not that is not what his opinion is, okay? And so, and I deliberately included in there the DHCD guidance, because that is the guidance. That is the only published guidance that's out there. That's what the Housing Authority's expert relies on. And there are strict definitions, very, very clear definitions.
Now
as-
you're
no,
characterizing
there are
it.
definitions
Mr. Chair.
included in there about what preservation means. And the HCD has weighed in on that. And so I included that in there as well. And I do want to say that Mr. Foster's expert submitted a 5-page memo to Mr. Heap at 7:30 or so this morning. I know that he spent several hours reviewing it. And I know that he sent this reply in which he said that it doesn't change his opinion, and he says a little bit more than that. So I believe that he took those things into consideration, but I don't know that it's fair. I guess what we have on the table is an opinion of our council, initial opinion, a review of the reply by the Housing Authority, and then a summary email basically saying that it doesn't change his opinion. Okay, that's what we have. Okay. So you're Gene and Reg, you want to pick her at this or that, that's fine, but that's what's on the table.
Right.
Right.
The chair?
Yes.
Change his opinion, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, am I being recognized?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to offer my 2 cents into this. I'm one of the liaisons on the project, and I did in fact take the time to read the initial opinion by town council. I read through the Needham Housing Authority's rebuttal, and then I read the final conclusion by town council. I then also went through and I took a look at the Community Preservation Coalition website, and I went back and I looked at all the references provided by the Housing Authority for the 3 towns listed, where they tried to justify funding of this position. And I concluded that the positions as outlined in the argument by the Housing Authority were different than the positions that as described and as written on the Community Preservation Committee website database. So I'm comfortable in moving forward with town council's opinion on this. And I don't have any legal basis, others may, but I don't have any legal basis as a member of this committee to refute town council's opinion. So for that reason, I'm voting against it.
All right, any other comments?
Yes, I have one last comment.
Sure.
When it came to what was warrant Article 19, we changed what was requested to narrow it to address town council's opinion. And I think that the motion offered by Mr. Foster does exactly that with regard to Article 17. And narrows it to that person devoting the work to the preservation and redevelopment of community housing. And when I went back to the application and said, oh, well, that means the adding of 121 new units. And Mr. Foster started to correct me. I think he's right, because the overhauling 296 of our existing units could include work that is preservation, such as making sure that the roofs are in such good condition that they don't leak anymore. And then there's other work like the kitchens and maybe the elevators too, that is not eligible. But the person would only work on the eligible projects. I think that is the concept. Is that correct? Did I get that correct?
May I respond?
Sure.
I don't think that would cure the problem, although I very much appreciate your saying that. I mean, trying to be as neutral as I can with both sides of the argument. There are 2 dimensions to the problem. One is that I think town council if we made that sort of vote, town council would still say you're wrong about it. Let's say we brought them all back, both sides back on the 6th to have a debate between 2 experts and not between me and you receiving all this stuff in the last 48 hours, just like me.
And I haven't seen your letters.
And you haven't read my
Your
letter.
expertise
So
at all.
you got to, right now we're all uninformed and I appreciate it. But for reason number one, I think if everybody had the time, the beginning of the process, review everything, I think that wouldn't be a solution that was acceptable to town council, as I understand his point of view. The second reason is it's not workable. We are a very small, when you read our response, part of it is we're a very small agency. We can't have one high-paid person doing 100% of one thing over here, the assistant executive director, and the executive director doing everything else that isn't MRI over here. Every day it's mix and match and so forth. So the argument we were making that has been rejected by town council is because you can't have a segregation of duties the way you just spoke to, then it's ineligible.
And we also followed town council in their opinion, in his opinion, said that funding for higher up survey was appropriate.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
With all due respect, Reg, I believe I am informed to a certain degree.
Good.
I've read everything.
I just disagree with your comment that we're all not informed.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I was just saying.
No,
She
you
said
did-
she hadn't read.
No, you
the
did say we're all
responses.
uninformed, and
I
that's not
apologize.
correct.
I
I've read everything. Okay,
Yeah.
I felt I
As well.
was coming in.
okay.
Don't know how it
All right.
felt.
All right, the hand is up. Laura Dorf.
My question is this, I know you can't like designate certain duties to a person, but is there a way, would we consider a partial funding of it? Because some of the duties might be attributed to, administrative work, but some might be attributed towards what's covered under CPC. So instead of funding the whole amount, would anyone be open to funding a partial amount for the position, knowing that some of her or his time might be spent on?
It's the same problem, right?
So Mr. Chair, if I may respond to that question. If that is one of the core arguments that was made in the response memo that you may have not had a chance to read, which said, for that very reason, we're only proposing 50% funding of this position to come from CPA funding, and the other 50% from coming from non-CPA funding, to kind of, from a top-down point of view, acknowledge the fact that in a very small administrative office, you can't have that segregation of duties. And that, I read Mr. Heap's rejection of our 5-page argument for the first time at 9 o'clock tonight. And he did not reject anything very specifically. He just said, I read it all and I still reject it all. So I don't think he would be persuaded by what you just suggested, because that's already the proposal that was on the table.
But that doesn't mean that we can't go back. I think if I heard before, and I don't know if anyone's open to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't propose it.
It is already proposed.
But it's already proposed, and our council is telling us it's not eligible.
Any amount of funding, any amount.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't agree.
What's that?
I don't agree, of course.
Right, Reg does not agree. Okay. All right, let's have a vote. Any further discussion? Hand is up. Laura, your hand is still up? No? All right, fine. Further discussion? All
Mr.
right,
Chair,
well,
Mr. Chair, may I ask you, how does this position where, let's say, half the duties, if you will, are going towards the act, the intent of the preservation, and half is not, whereas in the Emery Grover building, part of it's eligible and part of it's not, but yet we're able to vote for. I mean, is there a similarity between the two, or are they just two completely different where we don't, that argument doesn't work?
there are two different statutory provisions. I mean, that addresses historic preservation, and there's very specific language that addresses use of community housing. So it's different statutory language.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that everyone in this committee believes there's a necessity for this position. It's needed going forward. The big deal is it's not the funding source. This is not the funding source to get that position in. I mean, I feel badly for Reg. He's made a good case, but we can't, the money just can't come from this location. I don't want to start cherry pick and choose when we agree with town council and when we don't. I think we're either all in with these, with our lawyer, or we're not. I'm behind him on this.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to be. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's have a vote. All right. Barnes,
Nay.
Dermody,
Nay.
McKnight,
Nay.
Zimbo,
Nay.
Crocker.
Nay,
Nay. You say nay?
correct, nay.
Dorfman,
Hey,
Ursel, Nay. You want to vote last? Do you want me to vote? I'll vote.
Chair,
Chair votes no, and Foster.
I'm in favor.
Okay. Okay, so now that article, there, the motion fails, and so that will not be presented to town meeting floor. And let's see, I think that we've gone through, are there any other, oh, I want to bring this up. Which is another kind of, could have been fit under chairman's announcements. And the questions and answers that were posed at FinCom, both of the proponents made great efforts to answer them in written form. What we've done traditionally in the past has been to provide answers to questions that FinCom has asked us, sometimes in writing, sometimes I'll go back to a meeting and report in. And in this circumstance, they have made a request to have you come, the proponents come and speak to FinCom. Now, a couple ways of looking at that, but one is that I want to give these proponents their best. I want them to have their best opportunity to make their best case for getting potential support from the finance committee. Okay, so but that being said, I have expressed, and I've had some discussions, actually Rick has brought this up to me, which is a little bit of mission creep on the part of the finance committee. That is, we're responsible for due diligence. And I don't know that we want to establish some sort of precedent where they get to then bring in all of our applicants for their own interviews. But in this circumstance in particular, there are a lot of questions that were unanswered. And I wanted to give Housing Authority its best opportunity to make the case in front of them, wanted to have the community farms the best opportunity to make the case in front of them. But I want us to understand as a committee that I don't know that we necessarily should be going along with that procedure. I think that we may want to just, unless maybe only if there are extraordinary circumstances, provide something other than written questions. But again, maybe it's up to the proponent. But I don't want our job to be usurped by the finance committee. I often tell us that we need to stay in our lane, right?
Yes. And
So
I agree.
and I'm worried,
completely.
so in the Army, it's called mission creep.
Yeah.
Right? So but I think that it's fine. I think we need to be aware of that, because ultimately these boards we're a highly decentralized form of government, but we need to cooperate on some level. But we need to guard ourselves on the edges, right? So I just bring that to you for some thought. I don't know if anyone wants to control, but I will have some discussion with, we're going to have some discussion with finance committee about that. Artie Crocker.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, if it's any consolation, from my memory serves me, the main thing that we were getting big pushback on from the finance committee was actually the article we just voted down. So I'm not sure what the purpose is of going there at all. If memory serves me. So I think that was the only reason.
There were issues of accountability, and so also I'm going to report out to them that some of the structural things that we're going to be making changes to, because those all shouldn't fall on the shoulders of the Housing Authority either. So okay, all right, but that's
Mr. Chair, yeah, if I could just comment, because I was at the Finance Committee meeting. I've also been a 10-year. I served for 10 years in the Finance Committee, twice as chair. And the role of the Finance Committee prior to this most recent has been to advise and counsel the CPC, ask questions, raise issues, and so on and so forth. One of my concerns and why I brought it up is that, to a degree, we provide a layer between ourselves and the applicants as far as dealing with the Finance Committee. And I think it's it's more for, I agree that they should ask and encourage them to ask whatever questions they might have, and ask for whatever information they might deem necessary. But there's going to be a lot of discussion that we had here tonight with respect to the community farm and some of the concerns that they expressed with respect to the community farm. And I guess as a question of fairness, we're concerned about how much we've put the community farm folks through. I think this is just another layer that they have to go through. And I'm not suggesting that they don't have the right to ask the questions. I'm just suggesting that perhaps we should, again, have the two chairs discuss limiting their ability to go through this rather than a face-to-face confrontation with, and they also wanted to talk to the housing authority. I just think it's something worth pursuing and not necessarily just every year having them interview and discuss and talk to every applicant that comes before us.
I agree with you. And also, by the way, I think we should take the position that, my understanding is that they were going to ask the applicants the questions that they posed to me. And so, I'm assuming that that's going to be the case. But I agree.
I could offer a comment.
Yeah,
Since I've been on the hot seat indirectly there. I think, and I'm overgeneralizing a little bit, but I think in the main, pushing back the installation fee, for most of our projects that come before us is the right thing to do. But what went wrong, and I've listened to that finance committee meeting a couple of times to help create that Q&A. And I don't want this to come across as critical of anybody, okay, please. Is that in our case, what we are doing is very complicated. It has a lot of moving parts. There's no way that the people who did attend, even the proponent, like Rick and Artie, who sat through all of our meetings, can be on top of all the details. And it is a relatively unique new thing to start doing again in Needham. We were doing it 15 years ago, but that pretty much lost in institutional memory, except maybe for, Jimmy Hewley or something like that. But what he remembers, he brings into the present. And I don't think the questions that were answered or were asked there were necessarily mission creep kind of questions. And so I think maybe that, when we will be back, obviously, next December 1st, and it'll be even more complicated than it is right now. And I think, making that distinction, if I was going to kick myself, I should have just showed up at the meeting and sat in the room.
Right.
And even though I wasn't invited, and I think the meeting would have gone differently, and I did.
So you should know that, I don't know if everyone knows this, but that I had proposed, because I did think it was kind of unique, I had proposed that I bring the applicant with me, along with the consultant, so that they could ask those questions. But they wanted just a one-on-one Q&A with me, which was,
and that's what could be pushed back next year, is when you have a really complicated project like that, you say, sorry, I'm bringing them anyway. You don't have to ask any questions, but I'm going to do this. So what's the answer to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, I don't think it's an issue of this specific project. I think this is more a process. And the question becomes, they asked questions. Questions were recorded. They were provided written responses to all their questions. I think it's duplicative to have the proponents show up at a meeting after we've consulted with them, we've consulted with the select board. I mean, why don't we just have the select board interview all the applicants as well? We're going to them seeking their advice and counsel. We're doing the same thing with the finance committee. My point here is this is a process issue, whether it's a simple community farm application or whether it's a rather extensive Needham Housing Authority application. The question is, should the process be such that the finance committee gets to have a separate hearing on all the individual articles? And I just bring that up as a process question. We can debate whether this project is too complicated or not complicated enough. It's a question of how this should be handled as far as process is concerned within the town structures of government.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
different subject. You've heard this from me before. If the applicants are successful at town meeting, I would like to be sure that the CPC gets recognition somehow, plaque.
I think we need to go backwards on this. I think we actually need to spend money and put plaques up on all of the CPC projects that we funded over the last 15 years.
I second it.
I third it.
I mean, I really think that I think that that's important. We
Yeah.
We could
need,
do that while we're checking on the projects.
Yeah, other towns do
Reg,
it.
you want to make a comment?
If I may make a short comment on Rick's comment about the process.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Which I agree.
But I want, but I just want
to.
this. Okay, no, I was just going to finish because Joe's brought this up. So let's just make sure this happens. And okay, well, I want to talk to the staff about that. Okay, go ahead, Rich.
So I agree with Rick's comment about the process. And that's another dimension of what I think that if what he suggests works. The meeting with the FinCom has to be like a month ago or something, not with the warrant closing tomorrow, to going to the printer. Because then you would have had time, say, thank you for those questions. I don't know the answers, we'll get back to you and so forth.
But that was also one of the things that I brought up with them in terms of process, which was I'll have to go because you don't want to hear answers. You only want to give the questions. I'll appear before you earlier.
But, just picking on one of the questions, how the heck is the Needham Housing Authority going to do all of this? They're just a little agency and so forth, that you're not going to be able to dictate what questions they have on their minds.
Right.
Right. But you can have them asked a month earlier.
Right, that's what.
And then the process would work the way
Right.
Rick described it.
Okay, all right, yes.
Is this material we could discuss at a future meeting, please? It is 9:53.
Okay.
I second that motion.
Just-
Okay.
It's important.
I agree with
The process, we could go on and on about, and I am concerned about it, the plaques, I'm with you, Joe. But if there's something we can do tonight to wrap up.
All right, so I think that, so we have we have a motion to adjourn, and I think we can just send out, everybody knows that you're going to make your presentations. We may have a meeting before, but we may have to
Dress rehearsal.
report to our
I
town
love dress
meeting,
rehearsal.
but we're kind of in a wrap.
I don't want to cut anybody off, but.
All right, so let's have a motion to adjourn. It
We
has
have
to
it
be roll
from
call.
Joe Barnes.
And I will second that.
Who made the motion?
Joe Barnes.
Joe, okay, all right, Barnes,
Aye.
Dermody,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
McKnight,
Aye.
Zimbo,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
Dorfman,
All right.
Bristol,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
Good night, folks.
Night, guys.
Done.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Pete.